Hello there, I'm Randy Cross, and this is Unsafe Spaces. I want to thank you for joining us here. It's our third season. This is our fourth episode of the third season. And we've got a little bit of I guess, truncated, shortened version of the show because it will primarily consist of not only a feel-good story and our usual happy trails and whatnot ending, but the chunk of it is going to be our interview with Greg Gutfeld. Now, if you don't know who Greg is, he's on the 5 on Fox News. He's got the Greg Gutfeld Show on Saturday nights at 10 o'clock on Fox News. He's an author. He's a pretty funny guy. And he's one of those characters that, you know, when they sort of synthesize their thoughts on subjects you've always wanted to say something about, you hear them say stuff that you say at the TV. And they're saying it on TV. Check this out.
Today, 300 newspapers coordinated articles criticizing President Trump just after he'd accused them of coordinating articles criticizing President Trump. And nobody read them. If jerks like me weren't talking about it, would you even know? Yes, another public display of the press exercising their right to irrelevance. Remember when the New York Times ran an editorial saying you should vote for Hillary and the rest of the media followed? Now they say Trump's blocking free speech as they all scream this in unison. Trump accuses them of groupthink and they respond with groupthink. Now, since the election, the media's been one malfunctioning car alarm, loud, relentless, and broken. This, after sleeping through Obama's terms, ignoring Iran, the DOJ, the IRS, immigration, while dreaming of Hillary. And now he's gone, their dreams are shattered, and now they're wide awake because Trump is their Red Bull. What phonies. They gave Trump endless airtime while wringing their hands, thinking it was okay because Hillary had it in the pantsuit. But the palooka you propped up wasn't the empty can you thought he was. While mocking Trump nonstop, people stopped caring about what you thought. That Red Bull gored your butt, and now all you can do is blame him for what you helped do. And they say Trump targets all news, not fake news, which is fake news. They ignored the clarifications that are obvious to us. No surprise. Remember when one of us would criticize Obama or Hillary, we'd be called a bigot? I remember that like it was yesterday, probably because it was. You sought to silence opinion through fear and smear, and now you pretend you're the victim. You're not oppressed, just depressed. Get over it.
Again, Greg Gutfeld Show, Saturday nights about 10 o'clock, and every day on the 5. And with no further ado, let's get to the interview. All right, as promised, I'm joined right now by Greg Gutfeld from the Greg Gutfeld Show, from the 5, from Red Eye, if you have a really good memory from back in the day and couldn't really sleep. And Greg's got a best-selling book out now that is a compilation of all his monologues. And joining me now is Greg Gutfeld. Greg, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Randy. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing really good. Hey, do you need like a regular update? You know, we all have updates on our phones and or iWatches or whatever to remind you where you are and what you're supposed to be doing as far as what city are you in and what time's my show?
It can't. It probably isn't as bad as when you were playing ball, but when you're doing a book tour, it does get kind of confusing, and you meet so many people, and the only thing that keeps me going is coffee. Because that's you have to. I think I tripled the quantity of caffeine when you're on a book tour, and that means then you have to eat a lot of mint because you're always shaking hands and you don't want to smell like some office canteen, And but it is pretty crazy. The fans are great though, as you know. They're like you got to be up for everybody because even though you've seen a lot of people, they're only seeing you for the first time, so you got to be the best person you can be, even if you're exhausted.
You sound like a poster slogan. Be all that you can be.
I know that sounded really cliched. I'm embarrassed for that stereotype.
And just so a little background, I was on your show, the Super Bowl show, I guess, for Super Bowl 51, the one in Houston.
Right.
And I learned something about you that before that I really didn't know. And that was that you were from San Bruno. And
San Mateo.
San Mateo. Oh, San Mateo. Right. That's right. And you have a little background. My mother-in-law and your mom.
Yeah, I think it's your mother-in-law and my mother were part of the same bridge club.
Okay.
And so my mom would always come home and go, Randy Cross's mother I played bridge with her today. This has got to be like maybe 15 years ago.
Oh, at
I
least.
Think.
No,
yeah,
more like 25.
Yeah. Yeah, but and they used to have like these roving bridge clubs, like they'd keep them at different houses. They'd all get mildly drunk. Mm-hmm. It was pretty amusing to see these little old ladies playing bridge.
Hey, when you had the whole thought for doing this book, and it's not like you suddenly said, "Hey, I got to do a book." You've done quite a bit of writing. In fact, my favorite intro, doing a little research on this, is prolific writer Greg Gutfeld, but you know your way around writing. How'd you get to the monologues, and why did you decide to sort of not just list the monologues, but you actually kind of let people give them a little view into your brain?
Well, I thought that I started doing monologues at Red Eye. Mm-hmm. It was just I had this idea of like, okay, taking an idea that everybody has heard about that day, trying to distill it down to one perspective that they haven't heard. So the goal is to a common topic, portray it in a new way, but in a way that when you hear it, you go, aha, that's exactly what I was thinking. But he's saying it in a way that I haven't heard. It's kind of like almost like magic. You got to find out what's in somebody's head and say it quickly. So that was my goal with the monologues. For the book, when I started doing research, I realized that, well, a lot of these monologues are old, and some of them are wrong, and some of them I felt were not that well written. Yeah. And so I thought, well, what if I did like a separate kind of book where I just insulted myself? So if you get into the book, there's a running commentary in which I criticize my actual writing, and I talk about why I said this and why I should have said that. So it kind of peels back, that I guess that curtain a little bit to show you that, not all writing comes out the way it looks. It takes a couple of steps to get to where it is. And even when you get to where it is, it may not stand the test of time.
Yeah. The other thing I enjoyed looking into sort of you and some of these interviews about your book and stuff was the term libertarian conservative.
Yes.
What the hell is that?
Well, libertarian conservative is, I believe in free markets and free minds, which is, a lot of people say, well, I'm economically conservative and socially liberal, and I'm still not entirely sure what that means.
Exactly.
But I'm free markets, capitalism is the greatest system ever. But a lot of people don't think of me as a libertarian because I'm very, very, very strong on national security. A lot of my libertarian friends think, you can't be that way. You can't be tough. You can't be a hawk. You can't be strong on borders and law enforcement and call yourself a libertarian. And I disagree. I think that security and freedom go hand in hand. They're not oppositional. They're like spouses. They complement each other. So in order to have freedom, you got to have security. And if you want to have security, you got to have people who are enjoying their freedom. So they kind of go together. A good example is if you want to look at the opposite, you take a look at something like Somalia, where you have total freedom. You have no security. You have absolutely no security at all. So you would assume you'd have total freedom. Yeah. But in fact, it's the most dangerous place in the world to live. You can surely do whatever you want there in Somalia, but so can everybody else. So the idea that like one hurts the other, that security hurts freedom is BS. That's why I would say I'm a libertarian conservative in that I believe in free markets, free minds, but you gotta be secure.
All right. And you talked about sort of admitting in a self-effacing way, sort of sometimes you're wrong, and it does not all bad to point that out. And I noticed in one of the interviews during your book tour, you were talking about Donald Trump and that whole phenomenon when it first started, as far back as even 15, but into 16, that you thought it was kind of a quirky novelty. But you, at the time, you really didn't think that had any legs, did you?
Oh no. In fact, I have no problems admitting that, because I'd say that even most in the Trump administration, everybody didn't think that he had a chance and didn't take it seriously. In fact, I maintain that that's the reason why he won, was because the media, specifically CNN, were devoted so much media time to Trump because they felt he didn't have a chance. But he was great for ratings. It was highly entertaining, and they assumed that Hillary had it in the bag, that she was going to win. So they just gave him, I don't know how billions in free airtime, and all the cable networks showed him because he was just entertaining. But for a lot of people that supported Hillary, they were doing it because they thought it was just like, you know what? If he gets more airtime, that just helps Hillary anyway. They had no idea that they actually helped elect him. That's the real story, is that because they treated him like a joke, the joke kicked their butt.
Yeah, and isn't that, in a nutshell, even now, 2 years almost later, why a lot of people still don't get what he is? I mean, he has been, and he's got a lot of flaws. He's got a lot of negatives. You can't argue those points. As far as, he's about as tactful is not even in his vocabulary.
Right.
But he's the anti-politician. Everything he does is not only fodder for a monologue for you, but one of the reasons, and a lot of the media walks around with their hair on fire, is they're just, he triggers them.
Yes, and they keep reliving the trigger every day. That's I talk about the book that I was, his lack of tact was troubling even for me, and I'm an obnoxious jerk. And he was like, he would drive me crazy. But then once he was elected, I decided, okay, you accept the personality, or you're going to go crazy. So because you can't keep waking up every day and being the same problem. If you have an obnoxious uncle, you just kind of assume the fact that he's obnoxious. You don't wake up every morning and go, oh my God, he's obnoxious. That's what the press does with Trump, is that they keep acting like they never knew that he was like this. Well, now he's president. You knew he was like this. Now you got to move on. And my advice has always be to focus on his deeds and not his words, because then you could make clearer points about whether he's actually doing any good. If you keep focusing on the language, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah. And isn't probably those results, aren't they kind of the best advertisement for why you would want to even vote for a person like this, that his is sort of an anti-politician? Because the politicians themselves sure give you enough reasons not to want to vote for another one of them.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I make this point to the media keeps saying, "Oh my God, there's threats on the press." He keeps calling this fake news, but the reality is there's never been a more transparent administration. I mean, he says everything that's in his head. He shows the public the squabbles that are going on in his staff. He's not afraid to talk about the process. Like when he has these meetings, he'll tell you what's going on behind the scenes when he's talking to world leaders. He's a gift for a lot of the media, and they act like he's somehow stifling them. They have never been louder. They've never had more freedom. I mean, during the Obama administration, because they liked President Obama so much, they avoided reporting on some pretty interesting stories. But now they can't stop. I mean, they're finding scandal under scandal under scandal,
There's no doubt about that. I mean, Trump's in a lot of ways kind of like that weird neighbor you have that decides to build the bathroom with the glass wall at the shower that faces your house.
I've never used that analogy before, but I think I'm going to steal it.
Hey, what's the derivation or the starting point for the whole thing with the unicorns?
On Red Eye,
yeah.
I honestly don't know how it started, but I think I started making a joke about, wouldn't it be weird for a grown man to be obsessed with unicorns, because it's such a silly, unusual thing. And so I would always I think I started drawing unicorns and giving them away. And then kids started watching the show, and they liked the crazy guy who drew unicorns. And now whenever I go anywhere, people will give me unicorns. And now I have that mug on the table of the 5. And so people see that. And that was a gift from a viewer. And every time that little horn breaks, somebody buys me a new one. It's incredible.
Hey, how do you best describe, because when people read your bio and whatnot, and back in the day, I'll be honest, I didn't watch it live, but I would tape it. Or tape it. That's dating myself. But I'd have it on my DVR. How would you best describe to someone that never saw Red Eye what Red Eye was?
I would say that Red Eye to television was like when you make a sandwich at 3 a.m. drunk. You come home from a bar and you look in the fridge and you don't really have a lot of ingredients because you don't have a lot of money because you're like a college kid, but you got some ketchup, you have some salami, and you have 2 ends from the bread, and you make a sandwich. That's Red Eye. Red Eye is making a sandwich when you're drunk. And it actually turns out to taste like the greatest sandwich ever, even though the next day you're looking at the mess you made. But it's really about making the best out of the ingredients you have, and it became a cult favorite because of that.
Yeah, it was fun because it was something that was late at night and it was totally irreverent, and it was a time at night where you really could get away with it. Yeah,
exactly, because even the people at Fox weren't watching it. No one was up at 3 a.m. watching that, so we could get away with a lot of stuff.
Hey, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, because I've often talked about how information, and as important as information is, and as important it is for people to read and get as many sources of information as possible, when it comes to a lot of the media, it's almost impossible to really get the straight side of a story without having about half a dozen sources. Do you think that's ever going to go away?
What's interesting, and somebody said this, and I can't remember who said it, but it's something that you would know, being in pro football. You never know how biased the media is until they write about something So, like, if you were present at an event or you were at a game and you were reading something, you go, that's not how it happened. Mm-hmm. That's not how it happened. That's the lesson that I think that once in everyone's life, they will have that lesson when they read something that they were at and they go, no, that's not how it is. And it makes me think that no matter what, you're never going to get unbiased. You have to have an honest reporter has to admit that they have biases. That's number one. I think that they have to admit, yep, we're biased because we're human. But it's really weird. I don't think people understand when they're reading something that the people that are involved in that situation all feel like it's wrong. And because they always are talking about what's in people's heads. That's what drives me crazy, is that for some reason reporters become mind readers and will say what Randy Cross was thinking. Mm-hmm. You don't know what he was thinking. That's what drives me crazy, is that they make these assumptions. And I've read, I don't know how many pieces in which I was involved in, and there were inaccuracies. Sometimes the inaccuracies helped me. Sometimes they hurt. But I go, that's not how it went. That's completely wrong. But it's not worth chasing chasing the reporter down and complaining, because then that makes the story bigger. Yeah. So I think it's a reality. That's the only way I can see it.
Something that also has been I've been looking at askew are polls and the emphasis on polls. And right. You've done some great stuff in your monologues about polls and how wrong they've been and whatnot. But remember Miss Cleo, late night, the ad for the psychic? Are political polls just Miss Cleo waiting to happen?
Yeah, you know what? It's weird. The problem with the polls, or what happened with Brexit and with Trump, people who are going to do what they want to do aren't going to tell you. And they factor that in, but they don't. They don't. It's like if somebody, people said they weren't going to vote for Brexit, did vote for Brexit. People who voted for Trump said they weren't voting for Trump. That's what happens. A lot of people don't. And I guess you can't factor that. You just have to do your best. But I think that I think polls reflect what people tell pollsters. That's it.
Yeah, and why can't we list when Fox and CNN and MSNBC and the rest have on these people from these companies, whether it's Gallup or anybody? It should be like sports under their name,
right? Their
batting average.
Yeah, exactly.
Should be right there. Season batting 227 on the season on facts.
They would never have a job. They would never have a job because that's true. Because they're predicated on the short-term memories of everybody else.
Yeah. Well, what's next for you tour-wise?
Well, believe it or not, I have to do an interview right after this with a radio station in Philly. So I actually have to hop off and do that. But then after that, it's back. I'm doing the 5. You'll see me at 5 o'clock.
All right. Give my best to Kat and Big Tyrus.
You got it.
They're doing well. All right, man. Thank you so much, Greg.
When you're in New York, you got to come and do the show.
I will. Definitely. Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it, man.
Buddy.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you again to Greg Gutfeld. That was some really good stuff. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed the interview and if you enjoy our podcast on a regular basis, you're going to be nuts about our feel good of the story this week. I'm on top of the world. 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 Now, this feel good story, it's captioned, so they're going to kind of explain it to you. But just in a nutshell, a guy finds a severely malnourished and abused puppy. And his puppy is a pit bull. And I guess it's in really, really bad shape. And he takes it to a vet hospital. Well, end of story, right? Well, not really, because he takes an interest in the dog. But I think it's like a month later, when the dog's doing better, he comes back to check on the dog. And that's where the feel-good story of the week picks up. Check it out.
Yeah. It's making me teary, actually.
Nice boy. Nice boy. Oh, you're such a good boy.
He definitely remembered you. Oh my God. Wow, we've been at these places with us, but not like that.
Right?
Yeah.
How you been? How you been?
Bittersweet for us. We'll definitely miss him.
Nice boy. Yeah? How you doing? What do you think? Huh? Ready to go home? Huh? Yeah. Yeah, good boy. Good boy.
Yeah, just a great story. And, people doing unbelievable things for animals is normally a really good story, but it reinforces. Animals remember. Animals know. And they know who the good ones are, and they know who the bad ones are. And that guy is one of the good ones. All right. I want to thank you for catching this podcast. I want to remind you where you find this podcast, randycross.com, unsafespacesUSA.com. Get us on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Facebook, Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're pretty much all over. And if you have any thoughts or suggestions or a review for me or segments you'd like to see or other videos like my feel-good story that you liked, it's producer at unsafespacesUSA.com. You have a good week. I'm off to New York, then Hawaii, but want to wish you happy trails.
Happy trails to until we meet again. Who cares about the clouds when we're together. Just sing a song and think about sunny weather. Happy till we meet